Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. Tensions are rising in the South China Sea as the Philippine military reveals the discovery of underwater drones with potential military applications.
The report that we have mentions that there is a 55 to 80% likelihood that these underwater gliders or drones were made in China. They have the capability to receive, to store, to process, and to transmit data by satellite communications.
News out of Dallas tonight. A shooting at a local high school has left the community in shock, with a gunman still at large. Students are shaken as questions emerge about campus security. And the news starts now. Tensions are rising in the South China Sea as the Philippine military reveals the discovery of underwater drones with potential military applications. 5 underwater drones found by Filipino fishermen between 2022 and 2024 have raised serious concerns. Military officials say these devices are capable of gathering information that can be used in underwater warfare. While the military stopped short of definitively naming the origin of the drones, they did note that several bore Chinese markings, and at least one transmitted the signal to China.
Some of the components were available off the shelf. Some of the components had markings from China. Others had defaced markings. The report that we have mentions that there is a 55 to 80% likelihood that these underwater gliders or drones were made in China. They have the capability to receive, to store, to process, and to transmit data by satellite communications.
This revelation comes amidst ongoing confrontations between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea. And the timing couldn't be more significant as the Philippines prepares for major joint military exercises with the United States. The Balikatan exercises involving approximately 10,000 troops will begin later this month, and for the first time will include a test of integrated air missile defense.
The Nemesis, I will confirm that it's already in country. I will not say where, but it is going to participate. It's going to be part of the exercises. What we're looking at here is really an exercise verging into a full battle test, which means we are now treating the exercise as a rehearsal for our defense.
The Armed Forces Chief has also highlighted the strategic importance of the Northern Luzon region, where much of the exercises will take place, citing potential threats.
Do not be content with securing just the northern hemisphere up to Mavulis Island. Start planning for actions.
The discovery of these drones and the upcoming military drills underscore the escalating tensions in the South China Sea and the Philippines' increasing focus on national security. News out of Dallas tonight. A shooting at a local high school has left the community in shock, with a gunman still at large. Students are shaken as questions emerge about campus security. A shooting occurred at Wilmer Hutchins High School in Dallas, Texas. 4 students were injured in the incident, 3 of whom suffered gunshot wounds, while 1 was grazed. The injuries were reported to be serious but not life-threatening. The victims, aged between 15 and 18, were taken to various hospitals, including Baylor Scott and White Health, Parkland, and Methodist Hospital Dallas. The shooting took place shortly after 1 p.m. on the school campus located at 5500 Langdon Road. Students reported hearing around 7 gunshots and witnessed chaos as they evacuated the building. The Dallas Independent School District Police and multiple law enforcement agencies, including the ATF, responded promptly. The suspect, identified as a student, was initially at large but was taken into custody later that evening. According to reports, the suspect turned himself in at the Lou Sterrett Justice Center around 9 p.m. The district police confirmed the suspect's arrest but have not released the individual's name or further details about the motive. Officials stated that the firearm used in the shooting did not enter the school during the primary intake period when students passed through metal detectors, though it remains unclear how the weapon was brought onto campus. This incident follows a similar shooting at the same school about a year earlier, which also resulted in a student being injured. In response to the shooting, Dallas ISD suspended classes at Wilmer Hutchins High School for the remainder of the week and provided counseling services to support students affected by this trauma. The recent shooting is part of a broader pattern of school violence that has raised concerns among district officials and the community, which calls for improved safety measures and preventive actions to protect students. China's policymakers are facing a complex challenge, sustaining economic growth amid escalating trade tensions. While first quarter results are positive, the impact of U.S. tariffs poses a significant risk. Gabe Singer reports on Beijing's strategy to navigate this uncertain landscape.
China's first quarter economic growth beat expectations, even as policymakers brace for the impact of U.S. tariffs that analysts say pose the biggest risk to the Asian powerhouse in decades. Data on Wednesday showed GDP grew 5.4% from January to March from a year earlier, beating analyst expectations in a Reuters poll for a rise of 5.1%. Retail sales, a key gauge of consumption, as well as bank lending, topped analyst forecasts. Industrial output has also picked up speed as factories rush shipments to beat the latest tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump.
And we have $1 trillion trade deficit with China. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year we lose with China, and unless we solve that problem, I'm not going to make a deal.
However, analysts expect that trend to reverse sharply in the months ahead as the hefty U.S. levies take effect. Moreover, higher unemployment and persistent deflationary pressures are fueling concerns over weak demand and point to an uneven economic recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic. The Reuters poll showed that for 2025, the Chinese economy is expected to grow at a subdued 4.5% pace year on year. That's half a point down from last year and short of the official target of around 5%. Policymakers have repeatedly said the country has ample room and tools to bolster the economy. Premier Li Qiang this month pledged to roll out more support measures. Beijing has put boosting consumption as the top priority this year as it tries to cushion the impact of the Trump tariffs.
While fully affirming the achievements, we are also soberly aware that the current external environment is becoming more complex and severe. Global trade protectionism is rapidly heating up. The world economic order is facing a severe blow, and the task of domestic structural transformation is still relatively heavy. Therefore, it will take more arduous efforts to continue to promote economic recovery.
The ruling Communist Party is expected to hold a meeting later this month to set its policy agenda for the coming months.
Sending packages from Hong Kong to the U.S. is about to get much more complicated. Hong Kong Post is halting sea and air mail services for good, blaming, quote, exorbitant U.S. tariffs. We'll have the details on this development and what it means for consumers.
Shipping goods from Hong Kong to the US just got trickier. Hong Kong Post said Wednesday it has suspended sea mail to the US and will halt air mail for goods starting April 27th due to US tariffs. In a statement, it warned that sending items to the US could mean facing exorbitant and unreasonable fees because of what they called Washington's unreasonable and bullying acts. Hong Kong Post added that it would, quote, definitely not collect any so-called tariffs on behalf of the US. It also cited the US move to end the so-called de minimis exemption, which had allowed small packages to be sent free of import duties. Document-only mail will not be affected. Hong Kong, a special administrative region of China, faces the same tariffs as the rest of the country, according to a US government notice. Once a free trading hub, Hong Kong lost its special US status after China imposed a sweeping national security law in 2020.
Meanwhile, China and Malaysia will work together on trade, the economy, and investment, their leaders said in the Malaysian capital today. During a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said the two nations would collaborate in fields including artificial intelligence.
But as a true friend tested, we will work together in various fields of endeavor, in economy, in trade, in investments, of course, in the new technology, including AI initiative.
President Xi said he was willing to promote development of Chinese and Malaysian relations.
I am willing to work with you to continue to promote the development of the China-Malaysia community with a shared future in a high-level strategic direction, create more benefits for the people of the two countries, make greater contributions to regional prosperity and stability, and make the friendship between China and Malaysia from generation to generation more prosperous.
At a separate event, Xi and Anwar were present as officials from the two countries exchanged memorandum of understandings in several areas. New U.S. tariffs set at 25% for the automotive sector could lead to a $17 billion loss in potential exports from Japan. The ITC said Japan may seek to diversify its export destinations for vehicles.
For Japan, just to give an example, the automotive sector comprises 20% of the country's total exports, and the majority of exports are headed to the US market. Now, the flat 25% tariff on the sector that came into force yesterday means that Japan could lose $17 billion in export potential to the US, according to our calculations. In light of these new tariffs, countries like Japan can try to diversify the export destinations for vehicles. Markets such as China, Germany, the Philippines, and Thailand together hold an unrealized export potential for Japanese vehicles that matches the estimated loss in the US market.
A U.S. judge says there's no evidence the Trump administration has tried to secure the return of a man illegally deported to El Salvador. But District Court Judge Paula Zinis says for now, she won't hold the government in contempt of court. Thomas Eyelikeness for more.
While supporters of Kilmar Abrego Garcia demonstrated outside of her courthouse on Tuesday, Judge Paula Zinis demanded U.S. officials tell her what the government has done to secure his release. Garcia has been stranded in an El Salvador prison for terrorists after being wrongfully deported. Zinis says so far the Trump administration has not given her any information of value about what it has done. She now wants the government to produce documents and have officials sit for depositions by April 23rd to explain the steps they've taken to bring Garcia home. Outside court, protesters demanded justice for Garcia.
Bring home Kilmar now! Bring home Kilmar now!
His wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, says she'll not give up the fight to bring her husband home.
Today is 34 days of after his disappearance, and I stand before you filled with spirit that refuses to bring down. I will not stop fighting until I see my husband alive.
Meanwhile, the fate of more than 200 Venezuelans that Trump sent to this Salvador prison is largely unknown. Relatives of the prisoners demonstrated in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. They say the Salvadoran government is denying prisoners access to lawyers and have cut off all contact with the outside world. Carlos Penaloza, whose son is one of the inmates, begs the governments of El Salvador and the U.S. to show some compassion.
La petición que nosotros le hacemos al gobierno, tanto de aquí.
We demand the government of Venezuela and foreign governments, El Salvador's and the United States, to put their hands on their hearts and be humanitarian. Please, bring our boys back, at least now that we're in need to hear from them. Grant them a call, grant them communication with their father or mother or a relative, even if it's 30 seconds, so that we can hear them.
But their pleas will likely fall on deaf ears. Lawyers have filed petitions with the Salvadoran courts asking the government to justify the detention of the deported Venezuelans or release them. So far, the court has not responded. Lawyers argue that none of the deported migrants have committed a crime in El Salvador and therefore should not be detained. Yesterday, after Trump met with Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele, he said he'd like to see Bukele build more prisons to house even more migrants that he plans to deport from the U.S. He even suggested that he might send U.S. citizens deemed to be violent criminals to Salvadoran lockups. Trump doubled down on that idea late Tuesday in this interview with Fox News.
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the
homegrowns.
The ones that grew up and
Yeah.
something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love to do that.
And the president says he's come up with a new way to encourage undocumented immigrants to leave. Trump says he'll pay them to go.
What we want to do is we're going to have a self-deportation program, which we haven't even announced yet. I guess I'm announcing it to you. Why
Yes.
not, Rachel? Here it is. The only thing I haven't determined is what are we going to do? We're going to give them a stipend. We're going to give them some money and a plane ticket. And then we're going to work with them. If they're good, if we want them back in, we're going to work with them to get them back in as quickly as we can.
Like many of his other ideas, details are sketchy, and there is no timeline. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Former President Biden returned to the public eye today in Chicago, marking his first appearance since his departure from the White House. President Biden wasn't pulling any punches. He's taking aim at the current administration. Just 85 days out of office, President Biden is back, ready to challenge the Trump administration, especially on defending Social Security.
Promise. We made it a sacred promise. 73 million Americans receive Social Security. From their first paycheck for their entire life, they pay into Social Security. And in return, they count on Social Security to be for them when they're going to need it. Folks, must never ever betray that trust or turn our backs on that obligation.
At a bipartisan conference, Biden laid out his concerns plainly, and he warned of serious threats to Social Security, pointing to issues like cuts to staff, phone services, and local offices, measures that could jeopardize seniors' access to the help they need.
Fewer than 100 days, this new administration has made done so much damage and so much destruction. It's kind of breathtaking it could happen that soon. They've taken a hatchet to the Social Security Administration, pushing an additional 7,000 employees, 7,000 out the door in that time, including the most seasoned career officials. Now they're getting ready to push thousands more out the door. Already we can see the effects. For example, thousands of people use the Social Security website every single day to check on their benefits and submit their claims. But now, the technology division of the Social Security Administration has been cut in half. And so the website's crashing. People can't sign on to their accounts. What do you think it does to that woman's living alone at 74 years checking, just not able to even find out whether she can't even find out what that disability claim is she has. She can't file a new disability claim.
And Biden didn't mince words when he said this.
Why are these guys taking aim at Social Security now? Well, they're following that old line from tech startups. The quote is, move fast, break things. Well, they're certainly breaking things. They're shooting first and aiming later. And as a result, the result is a lot of needless pain and sleepless nights. My friend Governor O'Malley knows what they're really up to. He says, and I love his quote, they want to wreck it so they can rob it. They want to wreck it so they can rob it. And why do they want to rob it? In order to deliver huge tax cuts to billionaires and big corporations and keep it going. They want to make permanent the 2017 tax cuts, which overwhelmingly benefited the wealthiest Americans and the biggest corporations.
Tonight's speech underscores a familiar political divide and it clearly signals the Democrats' commitment to shaping their message in this new era. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy says doctors should not rely on vaccines to combat measles. The U.S. is battling an outbreak of measles that spans several states and has killed 2 children. Mark Castillo has more.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy told a media event Tuesday he thinks the Centers for Disease Control have done a good job of controlling the outbreak.
People get measles because they don't vaccinate. They get measles because the vaccine wanes. The vaccines wane about 4.8% per year. And so, that it's a leaky vaccine, and that problem is always going to be around.
But Kennedy, who has no medical training, says part of the problem with measles is that the vaccine loses effectiveness over time.
We need to also make sure that doctors know how to treat measles and how to treat the associated diseases, the pulmonary disease that often come with them, and bacteriological. And we can't rely simply on the vaccine. We also have to know how to treat measles. Children shouldn't die of measles. Healthy children should not die of measles. And there's no reason they should. If the doctors know how to treat at the hospital, that will not happen.
Medical experts dispute Kennedy's claim. Kennedy has been a vaccine skeptic for decades. He also suggested doctors should do a better job of taking care of measles patients.
I didn't expect this to be in my own backyard. I knew there was unvaccinated or vulnerable populations in this area, but seeing an outbreak that's this big, that's probably now the largest outbreak Texas has seen in 30 years. This will probably be the largest outbreak that the U.S. has seen, probably in the same amount of time.
There are no Food and Drug Administration approved treatments for measles, although in the past Kennedy has touted unproven alternative cures such as nutrition, vitamin A, and other treatments. The epicenter of the outbreak is in Texas, where there are more than 560 cases of the disease. Public health official Dr. Catherine Wells says she's surprised by how much the disease has spread.
And as we have more and more cases of measles, we're going to have a higher likelihood of seeing, just statistically, we're going to see more individuals needing to be hospitalized. And unfortunately, we are going to, possibly see more deaths. We have amazing technology and resources in our medical system, but they can't always save.
Wells says health authorities are still trying to figure out how the outbreak got started. She says it could last a year. And during that time, Wells says there will be more serious and fatal cases of measles. This vaccine clinic is seeing a growing number of people who want to be immunized. Teacher Scarlett Sperry has brought her daughter to get vaccinated. Although she supports the vaccine, she stopped short of saying it should be mandatory.
Well, I say to each his own. I don't think we should be mandated to get any kind of vaccine if we don't want to. But with my kids being, immune compromised, and obviously they're not babies, so I didn't do it when they were small. I just had a really hard time giving that many immunizations to my babies. But now that they're older, I feel like we're better off and more equipped.
If the outbreak continues past late January of next year, the U.S. could lose its measles elimination status. Mark Castillo for NET25 World News.
In Toronto, Canada, high schoolers who lack vaccination shots might not be able to attend school until they do so. Now this amid a measles outbreak in the province. NET25 correspondent Yolanda Aspiras has that story.
High school students in Toronto may be at risk of getting suspended if they do not get their proper vaccinations. Toronto Public Health, or TPH, says the first round of suspensions will affect 957 students in 21 schools. These students received a letter from TPH informing them that they were not up to date with their vaccinations and only half complied. If vaccination requirements are not met, the student can be suspended from school for up to 20 days, according to Dr. Vinita Dubey, Associate Medical Officer of Health. Ontario's Immunization of School Pupils Act states that Ontario students must be vaccinated against these specific diseases: diphtheria, tetanus, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, meningococcal disease, pertussis, and varicella. Some students missed their vaccinations in middle school because of the COVID-19 pandemic. These suspensions come as Ontario deals with a measles outbreak in the province, which has infected 661 people as of this report. TPH is issuing suspension to 10,157 students who are not compliant. Ottawa's Public Health has issued about 15,000 suspension notices. And in Waterloo, 1,600 students were suspended last week. Yolanda Spiras, Toronto, Ontario for NET25 World News.
Filipinos here in the country aren't the only ones gearing up for the upcoming midterm elections this May. Millions of Filipinos abroad will now have a new way to cast their votes. NET25 Washington, D.C. correspondent Jeff Sanidad has the details.
For Filipinos living abroad, having the chance to participate in the Philippines elections is not a new thing. What's new this year, however, is the way they could vote. For the first time ever, Filipinos living outside the Philippines could cast their ballots online. That's right, no more paper ballots. In fact, according to the Philippine Embassy here in Washington, D.C., no physical ballots will be mailed out. Ambassador Jose Manuel G. Romualdez says all systems are a go as we prepare for the 2025 national elections. He adds, the first online voting for overseas voters is an opportunity for every voice to be heard and every vote to count. Online voting for overseas Filipinos living here in the U.S. and Caribbean opened on April 13. Polls will close on May 12 at 7 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. But before a Filipino national could cast their vote, several steps need to be taken. First, check if you're a registered overseas voter by going to tinyurl.com/voteonline2025. Second, enroll online at ov.comelec.gov.ph/enroll. And lastly, vote at ov.comelec.gov.ph/vote. The last day to enroll online is on May 7. Online voting is offered in select countries at over 70 Philippine embassies and consulates worldwide. To check your voter record and learn more about online voting, please visit the embassy's website at tinyurl.com/voteonline2025. Jeff Sanidad, Washington, D.C., reporting for NET25 World News.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us. Good night.